conclude.
Then I want to thank the deputies who have passionately supported the motion. In relation to the Minister's comment that this is an unduly negative motion, let me say that my reaction to that is that it's a continuation of the terrible attitude that is always applied in this country, the patronising attitude that immediately seeks to isolate the group or the person that highlights complaints. This I have endeavoured, as my colleagues have, to make this as positive as possible. There were calls for the resignation of the CEO. We endeavoured not to go down that route for the moment and to make it as applicable to as many people in the Dáil as we could. In doing so, Fianna Fáil has failed, and I have supported many times Fianna Fáil motions. I don't think they have read my motion, nor the Independence for Change motion, which is a very general motion, calling for a review, not just of criteria, but of the operations of the scheme. My negativity attributed to me by the Minister doesn't arise from me. It arises from the complaints from the survivors who are enduring abuse in our name today in this Dáil. You talked about teething problems. This organisation is old enough now to have molars, and that organisation still cannot cope, and it has put a stop on processing of applications from 15. It cannot answer a phone, Minister. It cannot meet clients directly. It is acting in contravention of the legislation. Section 7 puts an onus on them, the board, to act in accordance with the principles of equity, consistency and transparency. I have outlined in detail how they're failing to do that. They have introduced contradictory schemes. They are treating survivors discriminatorily, in a manner that is discriminatory. Some are confined to a limit, some are not. Some are confined by way of priority, some are not. Minister, your department, have been at the very least disingenuous in your responses to questions of whether you have given permission for rent. The Minister sitting beside you has come in here today and backed you up. And I really don't want to go down a route of personalising anything, but you have an obligation under the legislation to give your consent to every single contract, including a lease. Please confirm whether you've given that. Please confirm whether you gave it for the extension of the lease entered into by the Office of Public Works. We were before the Public Accounts, or Caranua was, arising of what I heard there and arising from what survivors have told me. I and my colleagues brought this motion, not to be negative, but to have an oversight of this board, primarily by you, by your department, and by a proper board. And I've pointed out that the most outspoken member of that board has not been reappointed. Since then, it's been pointed out to me that the diversity of the board has not been considered, and a person of mixed race has not been reappointed. There are so many issues in relation to this that simply have not been addressed by either of you that it really appalls me. This is why we end up with inquiries. You have a responsibility. Assume that responsibility. Deputy McGrath has put it in a nutshell and asked you to take control. And the control is to have oversight, to give clear, crystal clear answers. Did you give permission for all of the contracts? I know you did not give permission for the fitting out of a new premises, which were fitted out without consent and paid for out of the funds. And are you standing over a situation where this board are going into premises at a rent of $272,000 approximately per year from a fund that's there for survivors? In relation to the mix-up over the hospital, the Deputy Byrne from Fianna Fáil might read the legislation. He might also read the minutes where it was a serious concern of the board that there would be money left for the hospital, and a matter that was to be clarified with the Minister. I'm glad, Minister, that you're now clarifying today that that money will not be going to the hospital, anything up to 110,000. What you're not, 110 million. What you're not clarifying, what about the interest that you were asked by other deputies? Is that going into a fund for the hospital, or will that go into this fund? And at this late stage, I would appeal to Fianna Fáil to read the motion and to withdraw their amendment. And for once, let us stand together for those that need our voices in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy.